You're about to enter into a new world of knowledge, curiosities, and high strangeness. This is a podcast of Straight Up Strange Productions.
You're listening to Mysteries and Monsters. I'm your host, Paul Bestall. We head to the north of England today as I welcome author and the host of the How Haunted podcast, Rob Kirkup, to the show. With several paranormal books under his belt, Rob shares some of his favourite locations and legends with us, as well as trying to uncover the truth about one particularly gruesome character in English history. But don't forget you can support the show by signing up at patreon.com/mysteriesandmonsters. $4 a month gets you ad-free episodes, guaranteed early releases, bonus content and more. Thank you to my latest patrons, Dave, Auntie, A54, Daniel and Ty. Thank you very much for joining the gang, and to each and every one of you that support the show, you are greatly appreciated. Mysteries and Monsters is across most social media platforms. Please subscribe to the Mysteries and Monsters channel on YouTube. You can also visit mysteriesandmonsters.com for news and episodes. Our exclusive merchandise site is available via TeePublic, and you'll find the link for that in the show notes too. And our intro and outro music are performed by the marvellous Weary Pines. Thank you as always to Dean Bestall for his wonderful artwork, and the show is produced by Mr. Brennan Storr of the Ghost Story Guys. The castles, lakes and ghosts of the north awaits us now, in the company of Rob Kirkup. My guest today has over 20 years' experience in the paranormal and is an author, paranormal historian and ghost hunter. Rob Kirkup is also the host of the brilliant How Haunted podcast, which tries to separate fact from fiction when speaking with real-life experiences of the inexplicable. Rob, a very long overdue welcome to an author who has several volumes in my collection of many books, so I'm delighted to finally have a chance to see you in person rather than just read your words.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having us on. I'm honoured.
I'm honoured you've fitted me in, sir. Like I say, I have visited the north of England because despite being a northerner, you are northerner more than me, as you are further to the border of beautiful Scotland. So at Cumbria, Tyne and Wear, County Durham, Northumberland, I love that part of the country. Very close to my heart. I've spent many a weekend away up there. I lived in Jesmond for a while, just outside of Newcastle. I've seen all the sights that particular part of the country has, and so I stumbled across your books on one of my many visits up there, and now I use you as a guide of where I should go looking for strange things in the localities, Rob. So I'd like to thank you for aiding my experiences of Northumberland and Cumbria as I search for strange and spooky things. So thank you.
Not at all. Thank you for buying me books. It's strange when I go out and about somewhere and I happen upon a book that I've written in a shop. It's always a strange experience. But yeah, it's nice to hear that somebody out there's bought them. I knew somebody had.
Well, I say that. I mean, you've done a fair few as well, Rob. You're into double figures.
14. Yeah, and I'm working on me. I'm working on me 15th. It's going to be about Whitby, which is a little further south than the places that I usually write about. Although I have done Edinburgh and York, but normally I focus on the northeast, and I'm doing Whitby, which will probably be out, I would imagine, like spring of 2027, educated guess. And I've got, this is hot, I haven't told anybody this, so this is a bit of a scoop, but Dacre Stoker, who is Bram Stoker's great-grandnephew, and does a lot of talks about Whitby and Dracula and his great-granduncle's work. He is going to write me forward for me book.
Wow. Brilliant.
So I've had a couple of Zoom calls with him. He's such a nice fella as well. He's very passionate about what Bram Stoker did, because the conversation I had with him, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody who's thinking about buying the book, but we got into a conversation about what Whitby would be like today if Bram Stoker in 1890 had decided to go literally anywhere else for a break while he was working on that book, which wouldn't have became Dracula if he didn't go to Whitby. So it's I'm really passionate about writing this book. I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into it and seeing it come to fruition and seeing it on the shelves. So yeah, I love doing the books. That's kind of what got it. Well, the ghost hunting got us started, I guess. Then the books followed. Then the podcast followed. Keeps us out of mischief.
Certainly does. But it is. I mean, it's a beautiful place, Whitby. But it is an interesting conundrum, like you say, that Dacre could refer to there, because whilst it is incredibly atmospheric and there's a lot there's a wonderful museum, it's a beautiful coastal location, Rob. You've got the ruins of the monastery up there, that incredible. You've got the infamous steps. You've got some wonderful shops and strange things, and yet it is synonymous with Dracula, which is weird because when you dive into Whitby's history, it's chock full of all kinds of weird and wonderful hauntings, from black dogs to phantom coaches to lost fishermen and all kinds of things, and many a different legend. And yet when you go there, it seems to get under your skin. I've been to lots of strange locations in the UK, Rob, but Whitby's one of them that as soon as I got there, within about 5 minutes, I just thought, yeah, you can just feel the strangeness, and it just appeals to people like us, I think.
I go every Halloween without fail. I've done for probably the last 15 years now. But yeah, I adore Whitby. It's a special place.
I suppose it's remarkable, really, like you said. We've got these particular locations, and Northumberland and Cumbria as well are littered with odd places, even from some of the more well-known castles and stately homes and the like, Rob, to some confounding cases. I mean, one of my particular favourites from your neck of the woods is the Hexham Heads, which is a whole cavalcade of oddness, from one of those stories where you've got people claiming it was them, and then when they're asked to demonstrate their skills, they fail dismally. You've got people claiming wolf ghosts are running around their houses, people saying they brought bad luck, and everybody's all confused about them. It's a fascinating case, but as I say, it's the tip of the iceberg. The Hexham Heads is crazy, but that's, as introductions to the region go, that's probably one of the strangest.
As soon as you started talking, I knew where you were going. I knew you were going to say the Hexham Heads, because it is such a weird case. And what I will say is, if I think back to when I was a kid, many, many years ago, and every week my nana would take me and my little brother to the library, and we would get books out. And when I reached the age of about, 8, and I'd had enough of the kids' books and I wanted to see what was going on in the adult book section. No, not that sense, you know what I mean? The books for
Yes.
grown-ups.
Yes.
And I picked up some books about like the paranormal, books that I've still got copies of today. And I remember reading about all of these weird things happening around the world. And when I came across the Hexham Heads, it hit me like a hammer that these strange things happen close to where I live. Like, Hexham was a place I knew as a kid, and the Hexham Head story has stayed with me ever since, like nearly 40 years now. And a couple of years back, I went into Hexham because I was writing a book called Illustrated Tales of Northumberland, and in there I included the story of the Hexham Heads, and I went and found the house where the heads were found. I was tempted to knock on the door and say, 3 Reed Avenue, I was tempted to knock on the door and say, like, do you know what happened here, like in the very early 70s? But I couldn't bring myself to do it. But I went to and like looked in the garden where those 2 stone heads were found all those years ago. And then, as you say, all kind of weirdness happened. And I mean, I've had some conversations recently about like what happened to those heads. It would be really interesting to try and trace where they went, but I think they're lost to time.
There'll be one of those things, as we often see occasionally in the media, Rob, that some student or somebody on a gap year is working at the British Museum and opens a drawer that nobody's bothered to open for 40 years and finds them.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing
that's
that
the
tends
best
to happen.
I think, yeah. I'd love to pick up the paper. I say pick up the paper. I haven't read a paper in years, but I'd love to put the news on. I'll go on the internet and see that they've been found.
Yeah.
Strange old story.
You're not wrong. I suppose it is one of those aspects of that when we sort of dive into it, or we have our first sort of experience in the strange, Rob, it's sometimes when we stumble across those kind of stories on our doorstep that we think this is actually happening all around the world, because often when you're a kid reading up, you'll read about the Bermuda Triangle or Bigfoot or the Yeti, and you think these are thousands of miles away, I'm never going to get there. And then, like you say, you've got the Hexham Heads, we've got Stocksbridge bypass, which all kicked off when I was a teenager and all my friends had cars. So, of course, we would always drive up and down there trying to look for ghosts all the time, Rob. That's what we did. And I suppose it just gives you a bigger understanding, because then you just understand why the paranormal is so popular, why it attracts so many people all across the world, whether they're religious, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist. There's no sort of avenue that's not available to someone wherever they are in the world, because everywhere has a strange story that often happens in their locality or nearby, such as both ourselves.
Yeah. I'm sure anybody listening to this will be able to, off the top of their head, immediately think of somewhere close to them equally as strange as the Hexham. Well, maybe not as strange as the Hexham Heads. It is an astonishing case, but yeah, in that kind of ballpark, yeah, 100%. I mean, I think especially in the UK, we're so fortunate in that there are so many places that are said to have weird stuff going on or be haunted or whatever it may be, that we can get to, no matter whether you drive or you're relying on public transport or whatever it may be. There's so much going on in the UK.
Mm. Absolutely. I mean, and that's even before you start considering things like stone circles and monoliths and the like that are dotted about. I remember when we went up to Keswick a couple of years ago and managed to get over to Castlereagh. And it was just one of those days, Rob, where you could understand exactly why somebody decided to do that 3,000-4,000 years ago, because the weather was really bad. The clouds were really down. You felt like you could reach up and touch heaven. The clouds were so low in above Castlereagh, and it was just jaw-dropping. It was amazing. And whilst it was a Sunday morning, weather was crap, and there were hundreds of people, just big buses coming and all sorts of people still coming, still had to visit this incredible location. Like I say, 4,000 years after it was built. It's incredible the pull that some of these locations still have, even to people who aren't from the area.
No, I know exactly what you mean. Whenever I've been over at the Lake District, I always find myself over there. Castlereagh Stone Circle's a place that I think I wrote about it in my Cumbria book, and I went and took photos for the book. But at the same time, it's a place that I'll never tire of visiting. And we're really, really lucky. We've got so much history in the UK, and that's before we even talk about the really famous ones that people know about, like Avebury and Stonehenge and the likes. And there's I think that the big draw for a lot of people, the big draw for me, I think, is the mystery around them. And I know I've covered both Avebury and Stonehenge on my podcast. I've had friend of the show Emma, who does the Weird Wiltshire blog, on a large number of occasions, and we covered Avebury and Stonehenge together. And there's so much. There's like ghost stories, and when you start to scratch beneath the surface and look at some of the legends and some of the theories around why they were built, I just find the whole thing fascinating.
Absolutely, I'm drawn. I was one of those kids when I was growing up. I was really interested in archaeology and Egyptology and things like that, Rob. So when you see these monuments all around the world, they are just, like you say, as soon as you fall on them, I think if you've got the mindset we clearly have, you just fill up with questions and the possibilities and the reasons. It's a never-ending source of fascination for me.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about archaeology. I've got some kind of qualification in archaeology. I did a night class about a decade ago at a local college in archaeology. I think I've got the equivalent of like an A level or something like that. But I love all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So for you, what pulled you into the paranormal? Because I think, like you say, some of us grow up, we live in haunted houses, or we've got friends, or famous locations, or it's something that happens that we just develop from an interest. And so you, as this young lad in the library, finding out these wonderful ghost stories and seeing that they were all happening around the corner for sometimes, how did it lead you to end up investigating and going, because I think it is often, when I've spoken to friends and other people that have been on the show over the years, Rob, there's a big leap in regards to enjoying and reading about the paranormal to then actively going out and searching for it, because I think we can both say that the whole package of ghost hunting has certainly changed since we were schoolboys to what it is now, where now it is a form of entertainment. You can go to locations all over. So what pulled you further in from your love to actually, boots on the ground trying to scare yourself?
It's a real fortuitous series of events that led us to going out and doing my first ever ghost hunt. And I was doing it before it was cool, like before Most Haunted was on the TV, before all of these companies were out there charging people like a few quid to come along and do a ghost hunt. So what happened was in 2002, so going back like 23 and a bit years now, I was listening to a local radio show called Alan Robson's Night Owls, which was legendary in the Northeast. It was on Metro Radio.
Yeah.
And Metro Radio doesn't exist anymore. And Alan Robson's Night Owls doesn't exist anymore. But Alan was on the radio. Alan was on the air in the Northeast doing like a late night phone-in show for over 40 years. And he did shows where he would go out to a castle or a mansion or wherever, like a forest. And he would do a show, 4 hours, 10 o'clock in the morning, or 10 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning. And he would walk around and tell you the stories. And I found it incredibly atmospheric, really, really compelling listening. And his big Halloween shows were a big event. And in 2002, he said in the run-up to Halloween, like this is probably late August or September or something, he said, this year for Halloween, I'm not going to be going anywhere myself. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be in the studio, getting you on air. You can tell us your ghost stories. And what I'm going to do is I want people who want to be set a challenge to write in and tell me why I should pick you to be a Night Owl's ghost hunter. And if you're selected, I will set you a challenge and send you somewhere. You'll go there on the night of Halloween for 10 o'clock. You'll ring the studio, tell us you're in position, and if anything happens, you ring the hotline and we get you on air, and you will be part of the Halloween show. I had always had a passing interest in the paranormal, as I alluded to from my childhood, but I'd never pursued it. So I thought, this sounds brilliant. I'd not long graduated from university, and I thought, I'm going to write a letter. If I get picked, I'll round up a few of my university pals who I still speak to today, and we can go on a ghost hunt. It'll be brilliant. A couple of nights later on the show, Alan said that he's had over 5,000 letters so far, and he was only going to pick 10 people.
Wow.
And I thought, well, it was a nice idea, but I don't stand a chance. And a few days later, I got home from work, and there was a letter waiting for me with the Metro Radio postmark on it.
Yeah.
And inside was a letter from Alan Robson, and I'd been picked. And he wrote a letter. And the thing is, I thought I'd lost this letter. But September last year, I was doing a bit of cleaning in the house, and I was up in the loft and I found it.
Oh,
still in the envelope and everything, in perfect condition. It's on my social media. I think I posted it on like my Instagram and my Twitter and my Blue Sky. But I found it, and Alan picked me, and he wrote a letter saying, you're going to go to a place and you're going to be a ghost hunter. And the place he sent me was a lake near Brampton in Cumbria, called Tork and Tarn. So Halloween 2002, me and 3 friends were in position in the middle of nowhere in this forest surrounding a glacial lake. And Alan had photocopied the story that goes with the place. So it's not a particularly lengthy story, but the lake is said to be haunted by the ghost of a girl called Jessie. And many years ago, there's no dates to go with this story, but many, many years ago, she was in love with a man who lived in the area, and she wanted to get married, and she wanted to tell his family that they were in a relationship, but he was reluctant to do so because he was a wealthy landowning man and she was beneath him in the social scale. She was of a lesser class. And she said, look, you need to tell your family. And he said, okay, I will. And then we'll be married. Meet me at the lake tonight and we'll arrange it. So we met her at the lake. He said, yep, I'm going to tell everybody we're going to get married. They made love at the water's edge with the water lapping over their bodies. And then he held her head beneath the surface and killed her because she didn't know, but he was engaged to another woman of equal standing to him. And then as the story goes, he placed her body inside of a sack and then another sack and then another sack and took it out into the water, filled it with stones and pushed it beneath the surface. And the letter that I got from Alan said that the previous month before Halloween in the September, it was in the local newspaper in the area that 20 odd people had seen the bloody apparition of a woman walk from the water in broad daylight onto dry land and disappear before their eyes. So we went along on the night of Halloween, and it was an incredible experience. We didn't really know how to do a ghost hunt. Like, nobody teaches you how to do a ghost hunt, so there was a lot of walking around and listening and maybe saying, is there anybody there? But because Most Haunted wasn't even a thing when we were doing it, we didn't really have anything to go off. You couldn't Google.
Yeah.
How to do, well, you could do in 2002, but the internet wasn't what it is now. But we had a great night. Nothing happened. Spoiler alert, like nothing happened. But it set me on my path. When I got home, I got in touch with like the castle in Newcastle, the Castle Keep that Newcastle's named after. Yeah. And I said, can I come and do a ghost hunt? And then that was it. Hey. I just carried on doing it and I've not stopped. That's a long answer, but that's the story. That's how I got from A to B.
Well,
if I hadn't been picked by Alan, I wouldn't be talking to you now.
Precisely. You know? Sometimes you just got to give it a go, haven't you? And you never know what might happen, Rob. That's
yeah.
If you'd have not tried, you'd have been kicking yourself for the rest of your life. And if you'd have tried and not gone through...
Maybe, but I would never have known what I'd missed out on, you know? But if I hadn't done that, I'd never have written any books. And the thing is, I mean, you say, like, you've got to give it a go. The books came along, like, I put a website together. It doesn't exist anymore, but I put a website together where, like, I documented our ghost hunts that we did. Yeah. And one of my friends just said in passing, like, people love going onto your website and reading like, your version of what happened. Mm-hmm. Why don't you write a book? I'm like, I can't write a book. You know, I haven't got any qualifications in English or anything. But then one Sunday evening, I think it was, I just thought to myself, like, it was nagging away, and I thought, you know what? Why can't I write a book? Other people have written books, so why can't I write a book? So I emailed, I went onto Google and I looked at publishers who'd published things to do with the paranormal, and I approached a few and just sent them an email and said, like, I've got an idea for a book. Would you be interested in having a chat in the History Press? A lady called Matilda Richards from the History Press came back to us and said, let's have a chat. And that was it. That's how I got my contract for my first book. Just chancing my arm. As we say up here, shy Ben's getting out. Which is the Geordie way of saying nothing ventured, nothing gained. Yes. But yeah, I mean, I just gave it a go, and then again, if I hadn't written any books, I probably would never have started a podcast. So yeah, it's keeps us out of mischief, something to do.
Yeah, Alan. So it's all Alan's fault, really, then, Rob, isn't it?
Alan Robson, yeah. It's all his fault. Bless him.
I mean, telling like you say, this wonderful. It's one of those because it's near Bempton, which is quite odd. Brampton, sorry, because there's a Brampton this neck of the woods as well. But it's obviously it's one of those that I think the Lake District just pulls everybody in Cumbria, because this isn't really part of it, because it's one of those beautiful places, like you say. I think it's an old glacial scarring lake, is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
but it's a beautiful little park. But it's one of those that I think, unless you're from that region, Rob, it's one of those places that most people aren't aware of. Because, as I say, Cumbria, Windermere, and the rest pull people's attention when you talk about it. It's like when you talk about lake monsters in Scotland, and everybody says Loch Ness straight away. Nobody mentions Loch Moray, which is the other one, which has probably got more sightings than Nessie. But Morag's not as sexy and not as famous. But it is what it is. And so these places are like that. And they're dotted all about. Like we both know, as I mentioned earlier, about the Hexham Heads. Some people will be absolutely nonplussed by that. And I'm always surprised when you forget, I think, especially when we're so immersed in this particular subject, what's pretty standard and well known for us. It is often quite surprising when we find people who don't know anything about it or think, what's that about? Or they know a particularly bad version of a famous haunting or the like.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, 100%.
When you were beginning to sort of pull your ideas around, like you said, you got in touch with the castle in Newcastle to try and get started there. Did you have a location list that around you, Rob, or was it one of those that you went somewhere else and then people word of mouth, or was it a bit of everything that you kind of got places you'd want to go, places you'd heard about, and places that were on your doorstep and you thought, I'll try these first? Or was it just a case of, I'll just go wherever I can?
A bit of each of them. It was way easier to get in places then than it is now. I'll say that much. Like, I approached the castle, keep in Newcastle, and said, "Can I come and do a ghost hunt?" And I got a reply back saying, "Yeah, that's fine. Like, give us £10 per person to come along, and that cover the person who's on security." So it cost us 30 quid for 3 of us to go along and do a ghost hunt there. Now it would cost several £100 because it's so hard to get in places, because they know that the ghost event companies that are out there will pay way more money than people can afford to pay to come along and do it as a smaller group. Like, I approached Chillingham. I basically went to places that I'd heard of, and then I started looking in books. I went onto places like the Paranormal database.
Yeah.
And I just reached out to anywhere I could. And then what I also did was I started looking at those places that exist that are outdoors. So you don't necessarily need to approach anybody and do it. So I could just jump in the car with me torch and a camera and go along on an evening and see what's going on. A bit like Talking Tarn. Challenge with those places, they're not exactly a controlled environment or anything like that. There's no guarantee you'll be the only person there. But still, it was an adventure, which I still continue to think of it as today when I go along and do investigations. I still always think of it as being an adventure.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things, isn't it? There is often this incorrect perception that if you want to go ghost hunting, you've got to go to a stately home or a castle or a house, Rob. But you only have to look at your neck of the woods, my neck of the woods, and the bit in between us, the North Yorkshire moors, is scattered with outdoor haunted locations. Regardless, it's nicer to be inside, and obviously living in this neck of the woods, it's not a 12-month of the year outdoor pursuit, because we both know how nobody wants to be walking around the north in January hunting for ghosts, Rob. Personally,
no. Well, maybe depends on if it's raining or not. If it's cold, I'll still be all right with that.
Yeah, it's the rain that puts us off. I think anything else, I'm all right. We're used to getting wrapped up. Get the big coat out, Rob.
There's loads of them. I mean, Northumberland's got the most castles of any county in England, and a lot of them are ruined. Castles just left in fields. There are so many worth looking at. So as long as you respect whatever rules there are around them, like there's some of them that are English heritage where the sign says accessible anytime during daylight hours. So I think as long as you follow the rules or the restrictions that are in place, these places are gold mines. Anybody can
Absolutely.
just at a loose end. Oh, I'm going to pop out, jump in the car, and see where I end up.
Yeah, I mean, me and my partner, we're members of English Heritage, and that's been an absolute goldmine of wonderful locations, like you say. Because if you go there saying, "Oh, I want to come looking for ghosts," you can be paying 100. Whereas if you join somewhere like the English Heritage, you're paying £10 a month, and you've got free access to some of these incredible sites up and down the country. I remember we went. I think we were coming back from Whitby actually, Rob, and we stopped off at Riverlow Abbey, which is a place I've always wanted to go to. And I got there, and I could not believe that it had taken me nearly 50 years to get to this place, because it was absolutely jaw-dropping, this incredible monasteric ruin. And organisations like the English Heritage do such an incredible job in maintaining and looking after these absolute icons of our history, and that's a prime example. And it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I went there 2 years ago. I was there in September 2024 because I spent a week in Yorkshire living in a 15th century castle's undercroft. A haunted castle.
Yeah.
Snape Castle, it's called.
Oh, yes.
It's got nothing to do with Snape and Harry Potter.
No.
But it's in a little village called Snape, and
Yes.
it's you can, like, I don't know how much it costs, but yeah, for a week, I had a week's break in a 15th century castle's undercroft, and it had a chapel around the back which dates back as long as the castle, and I could access that any time. Like, I was sitting in there at midnight on my own. I recorded audio the whole week I was away to turn into Patreon episodes. But that was an experience, and yeah, I had some National Trust and English Heritage days out while I was there, so that was nice.
Yeah. I mean, Snape's one of those places, like you say. It's one of those, unless you're from the region or you're really into castles, most people would just drive past somewhere like Snape.
I'd never heard of it before I booked it for a holiday.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you just got to take a risk,
really
haven't you? I mean, you've mentioned it. I've mentioned it on here previously. I'd always wanted to get to Chillingham. Rob, it was one of those places I thought, I've been past it so many times, and its reputation precedes it, and I've known about it most of my adult life. And I thought, I can't believe I've never been here, and so I eventually got there. Was it last year, year before? And it didn't disappoint at all. It was incredible. For you, it seems to have. You've got a real kinship with the place, Rob. It's almost as if, I think all of us have favourite locations or favourite cases that draw us to certain locations, but it seems that you seem very sort of switched on with Chillingham, and Chillingham seems to be very welcoming to you, I gather.
Chillingham Castle is a place, I think, that really left an imprint on me in the early 2000s. I mean, I've talked about it already, but listening to that late night radio show, Night Owls, there was one show that Alan did at Chillingham. Before Chillingham had the fame that it did, I think he probably played a big part in enhancing its reputation and making it famous, or dare I say infamous, in the way that it is today. Because he did a show a long time ago now, probably like 2001, or it might have even been 2002, where he spent 4 hours on a night, 10 o'clock till 2 o'clock in the morning, walking the castle, telling the stories, and it was so compelling listening, and it drew me in, and I thought, I need to go to this place, and I did. And I went along to Chillingham, and it's a place, I don't know how many times I've been, but I generally end up going at least like once a year, and I've done 2 investigations there. And I've been fortunate enough to do it. Like, now it's next to impossible to do an investigation there unless you're part of a big group. You can't, like, if you're staying in Northumberland, you can pay, I think it's like £50 or £50 or £60 and join an organised investigation at Chillingham, which is well worth the money. But the 2 I've done it was just me and my friends, really. And we were lucky to do it when we did it. Chillingham's an amazing place, and I think the stories that it's got are so rich. And I think anybody who's visited it, or dare I say, even seen photos of it, it's such it. One of my friends summed it up perfectly. The very first investigation I did there, he'd never been before. He knew nothing of the place, and when we walked in, he said, "This looks like it should be haunted." And when you're walking around the castle, I can't think of a better way to sum it up. The stories that it has, I mean, like going back to the oldest stories probably would be the stories of Lady Mary Barclay.
Mm.
And these stories, like, she dates back to the 17th century. She was one of Chillingham's lady. She was married to Ford Grey, and he ran off with her younger sister, who was underage at the time, and he was imprisoned for seducing a minor, but he never came back to Mary Barclay, and she remained in the castle until her dying days. She passed away in, I think it was 1719, and she's said to be there to this day. People have said that they've experienced like the sound of rustling dress, or feeling sorrow, or like a cold air sweeping through the hallways. And one of the apartments that you can book if you stay there, the Grey apartment, was her bedroom, was the room that she lived in once. And her story was a story that I read in a book. Like, the thing about Chillingham, what I will say is, if you pick up a book about haunted Northumberland from the last century, from before the year 2000, Chillingham probably won't be in it. It's a place that I think's really came to prominence since. And if it was in it, the two stories that would be in there would be Mary Barclay and the Blue Boy.
Yes.
Sometimes called the Radiant Boy. And he is, he's a character based in fact, because it's been said that in the Pink Room, which again is an apartment that you can't visit this room on a day, like on a ticket paying to get in. But if you paid to book a room to spend a night at Chillingham, it's one of the rooms you can book, the Pink Room. And he was seen in there. Like, people claimed that they heard the cries of a child in pain, or a bright blue light appearing near the foot of the bed. And in the 1920s, when the room was being renovated, workers found a skeleton of a child behind the wall, accompanied by fragments of blue cloth, and this poor child had been walled up alive. And it's said that he moved on after being discovered, but at the same time, blue flashes of light had been seen in that room, supposedly. I haven't spoken to anybody who's witnessed that firsthand, but it's written quite a lot. And people have blamed it on electrical faults on the walls, but there is no electrics in the walls where he is said to be. Big character of the castle now is that everybody knows about, John Sage.
Yes.
And the story of John Sage is a particularly horrible one. My very first book, Ghostly Northumberland, my first review on Amazon was a 1-star review from somebody who said that it was too gruesome and bloody. And I think it was John Sage that led to me getting a 1-star review. So the story of John Sage is during the Anglo-Scottish Wars, when England were fighting against Scotland, like William Wallace times. The story goes that John Sage was in the English army, and he got like a knife or a spear through his leg, and he couldn't fight anymore. So he apparently wanted to continue to fight for his country, and he was given the position, supposedly by King Edward I, Edward Longshanks, the Hammer of the Scots.
Yeah.
He was given the position of Chillingham Castle's torturer. And the story goes that he revelled in this role, and he was torturing Scots. Nobody could have done a better job. He was doing all sorts of stuff. And when you go into the castle now, when you go into the torture chamber, you see all sorts of horrible devices of torture. You've got like a pot with a big, thick, heavy metal grate over the top of it, where somebody would be put inside, a fire would be lit beneath them, the big metal grate would be put over the top of it, and they would be boiled alive. And even when you look in there, there's bones in there now. There's a barrel full of
Yes.
spikes that would be rolled down the slope, and I've heard people claim that babies would be put in there and rolled down, and all the flesh would be pulled from the bodies. You can see why I got a 1-star review. And I mean, there's other all sorts of other things in there, like thick devices for gouging out eyes and ripping out tongues. And there's hanging from the ceiling, you've got cages that people will be put inside and just left, but they're not big enough for somebody to stand up straight. So if you were lucky enough to escape, to survive the torture chamber, you would never stand up straight again. And as the story goes, the only real challenges to John Sage's torturing of the Scots was times of peace between England and Scotland.
Yeah.
And the story goes that there was 2 particular times where John Sage was ordered to release the prisoners because England and Scotland were no longer at war. And on the first occasion, he thought, well, hang on, if I do that, the children of these people or the family and friends of these people are going to come back and get us. So what he did was he went round the local villages and said, look, the Scottish people who've been burning down your houses and stealing all your stuff and killing your family, well, I'm going to release them from the castle on this day at this time, just a heads up. And then he released the Scottish prisoners, children, men and women, who thought, oh, we're free. And then they reached the long gravel driveway that leads to the castle now that you walk along. And there was English villagers hiding in the bushes, and they hacked them to pieces, and they never got to freedom. And then on the second occasion, what supposedly happened was the children. So he only tortured people who were worth torturing. The children were generally placed into an area which exists. You can see it today, a little dungeon called the oubliette, where there's it's a first floor room. There's a metal grid on the floor that can be lifted up and somebody would be thrown down. The children so on the second occasion, what he did was he took the children who were in there and took them up the top of a tower to a room that's called the Edward I room. Then in the courtyard, he lit a bonfire, and he took the men and the women and the older children, the older boys and girls who were being held prisoner in the castle, and one by one threw them onto this fire. Then he went up to the Edward room and he picked up an axe en route and hacked all of the children who were in that room to pieces. His undoing came at the hands of the Border Reivers. So what happened was his girlfriend was called Elizabeth Charlton, and he was I can't think of a way to put it other than he was having sex with her on the rack from the torture chamber.
Yes.
And choking her, and he took it too far and killed her. And her dad was the head of the Charlton Border Reiver clan. And what happened was he went to Edward Longshanks, the king, King Edward I, and said, look, you're going to have John Sage executed, or we're going to join forces with the Scots and we're going to take over all of your northern castles, like the castles you've got at just below the border. So John Sage was taken to a tree along the Devil's Walk and he was hanged, and that was the end of him. Supposedly, and this is a little bit of another ghoulish addition to the story, but supposedly as he was hanging, still alive, people started taking souvenirs from him, because torturers at the time were like the footballers of their day, like they were superstars in their own right. So before he was even dead, people were cutting his toes off, cutting his fingers off, cutting his nose off. I don't know what they were going to do with them, but this is supposedly what happened while he was hanging. And that was him, dead. And John Sage has become the ghost of Chillingham Castle, but he almost certainly didn't exist. Almost certainly. There's no, I don't want to tell such a great story and then immediately debunk it, but there's no historical evidence for him ever having existed. I mean, I don't think it should overshadow the fact that Chillingham Castle is still a horrible place, and torture definitely did happen there.
Yeah.
But I don't think John's. I mean, somebody out there might get in touch and say, well, actually, if you look here or there, you'll find that John Sage was a real historical person. But I do think that he's modern invention that has just became fact because the story's been repeated so many times. There's very little documented history of the castle that far back, and for such a fleshed out character, when there isn't any real detail of other torturers at other castles in the region with the same level of detail, it is a shame to say it, but I'm fairly certain John Sage was never at Chillingham Castle. I say that the very first ghost hunt I did there resulted in the most incredible thing I've witnessed on a paranormal investigation, and there was a psychic who was part of that story who said that John Sage was there when we were there. But yeah, I mean, like on my podcast, I like to try and not paint things as being fact if they probably aren't.
Yeah.
And the John Sage story, as wonderfully horrible as it is, I can't find any record of it existing before about the year 2000, 2001. And I've looked into it. I know there's other people who are trying to look into it as well. Like I've spoke to other people who've asked questions about John Sage. I mean, I don't think there's any evidence that he is a historical character at the castle. Sadly, I hate to do this. I hate to tell such a great story and then say, but it's probably made up. I've no doubt that horrible things did happen there. I mean, you've just got to look at the oubliette. You know, there's markings on the wall of where people were being held. And for a long time at Chillingham, at the bottom of the oubliette, if you looked down, there was a skeleton, a real human skeleton looking back at you. And there was an ask to the castle, like, look, this human, whoever it may be, is at the bottom of this dungeon. Why haven't they been given a burial? And there was a little note put in the oubliette for a long time which said, look, if this person, if we give them a burial, they'd be forgotten about because nobody knows who they are. But this way, people come to visit them all year round and leave flowers for them and things. And people left flowers. But now I was there last year and the skeleton's gone. Apparently it was a 12-year-old girl, the last person to be thrown down the oubliette to her death.
Blimey. I think, like you say, Sage is one of those stories that it is so gruesome and ghoulish. And the thing that made me begin to think it might be legend more than anything, Rob, is that I came across two differing ways he met his end. They both involved killing the Border Reivers leader's daughter. But one, as you referred to there, said it was hung from a tree and then people started cutting him. Whereas the other version I've read is he was hung in front of the castle and people were invited whilst he was on there to come and start snipping bits off him while he was alive and taking them away. And people were just cutting him off. And I thought, hang on a minute, these are two very different... They're similar, but they're very different how they're playing out. And it reminds me of the Sawney Bean story from Scotland, which is another one where it's been so well told over the years that people go on about it. I've seen people talk about it and even try and suggest that they were a family of werewolves that were living in this cave in Scotland. But when you look at the historical evidence, there's nothing there. There is no reports of hundreds of people disappearing, of a massive cannibal clan living in a cave. There's no reports of it at all. And you would begin to think, is it one of those stories that it was made up in the Victorian era, like some of these, like Berkeley Square is probably another great prime example of this, of a made-up ghost story that's become, is it true now? And often people look at it and say, well, was it just anti-Scottish propaganda that they were just suggesting that this is what real Scots were like and this is why we were doing what we were doing and trying to justify it? Because this country's had newspapers and messages, and obviously there were a lot of skirmishes and wars. We've got incredible records of all kinds of strange things going back centuries, and yet Sawney Bean, like John Sage, doesn't exist when he's supposed to exist. And then people have said, oh, well, it didn't happen then, it happened somewhere else. Well, hang on. just because the evidence, moving it further back doesn't make it any less real, because we know what people were writing things down in the 16th century as well. So it's remarkable how some of these stories seem to take on a life of their own, and even, as you say, looking at it forensically, Rob, and saying, right, well, where's the historical documents? Where's the evidence? Where's the grave? Where is the records to support this? They're not there. And we've got all kinds of characters in our history that pop up who have done less terrible things, it would seem.
I think the John Sage and Sawney Bean stories have endured because they are so horrible.
Yes.
I mean, I did a ghost hunt at Edinburgh Dungeon. You know, the dungeons where they're like made up and they are intentionally, they're scary by design. They had a Sawney Bean exhibit when I was there doing my ghost hunt there. I do adore the Sawney Bean story. I think I've covered it. I did an episode about the ghost hunt. I did it Edinburgh Dungeon, and I've covered it off there. I mean, last October I was thinking about doing Cannibal Month for October just so I could retell the Sawney Bean story, and I was thinking about trying to go to the cave, but it sounds as though it's fairly dangerous to attempt to get in, sadly.
Yeah.
But Chillingham, I mean, to come back to Chillingham, it is a special place, and it's a place I'll continue to visit. I will do another investigation there, and as I say, it's the place where I spent 2 nights there, and I've done an awful lot of paranormal investigations, but it's the place where I've experienced probably the most convincing thing that I've ever experienced on one of these ghost hunts. Yeah, Chillingham. Chillingham is the place.
I suppose it would be remiss of me, Rob, to say, well, what went on? What was the event that gave you pause for thought? Because I know, for those of us that have been on several ghost hunts, most of the time, not a lot happens, really. You might get cramp, or you have a really good conversation, or you find yourself falling asleep for no reason. What's going on here? So what happened to you? What was it that went on there? Like I say, with a man of your experience and the amount of locations you've visited and spoken about and done, what went on? Why did Chillingham deliver for you?
So I did Chillingham, the first time I did Chillingham was December 2005. I already said 2025 there. 2005, so over 20 years ago now. Yes. And I went along with... I was going to say a team of people, but essentially it was just my friends. I'd managed it. Back then it was easier to get into these places. And I'd approached Chillingham and said, look, like, I love this place. Can I come and do a ghost hunt? They said yes. So I asked some of my friends, I said, look, who wants to come on a ghost hunt at Chillingham? And I think there was 5 of us went. And we got there. It was a December night. We got there about 10 o'clock at night, I think it was. And there was one member of staff on duty. And there was a fella called Bob. And when I got there, he was putting up a Christmas tree in the courtyard. And he said, oh, hello, I'm Bob. And I said, oh, we're here to do the ghost hunt. And he said, I speak to them, you know. I'm like, you what? Sorry? He said, oh, the ghosts. He said, I talk to them. I'm like, oh, okay, Bob. And he said, if you want us to do anything, like if you want us to make anything happen, if you want us to ask them if they can make something happen for you, just give us a shout. And I'm like, right, okay, yeah, I definitely will, Bob. Yeah, I'll bear that in mind. And then I think, oh my God, like, we've got a right one here. But we went off and did our ghost hunt, like the 5 of us going around and saying, is there anybody there and all, and setting up experiments and stuff. But we got to about 2 o'clock in the morning. I think we'd been there for 4 or 5 hours and absolutely nothing had happened. So I said to the others, look, we're going to have to go and get Bob. We're going to have to bring out our secret weapon and see if Bob can really turn things around for us. So I went and found Bob. I'm like, Bob. And I went and found him. And I said, Bob, will you come and be part of our team and make something happen, please? And he couldn't believe his luck. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'd love to. And we were going around these rooms. And he was taking us into the Great Hall and the dungeon where the oubliette is and the Edward room. And he was telling us he was doing his best Derek Acora, and he was saying, like, all right, well, the ghost of such and such has just come in. And at one point, he did mention John Sage. And I'm like, well, can you ask him to do something, Bob? And he's like, oh, they're fading away. And I'm like, oh, typical. And it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, we went to the chapel, which was the last room that we got to.
Yeah.
We were sitting in the pews and Bob was at the front. He was stood in a doorway where if I was to go through that door, I'd be on the balcony that overlooks the tea rooms, like the exit from the room.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And we were all sat in the pews facing him. And one of my friends was falling asleep on my shoulder. And I thought, I've got to drive us home. Like, it's going to be an hour or so to get home. So I said, I was just about to say, Bob, this has been brilliant. But he spoke first and he said, oh. And I remember this like it was yesterday. And this was over 20 years ago. He said, the ghost of a young boy has just came into the room. He's called Eric, which isn't a particularly English or Scottish name. He said he's called Eric, and he's 13 or 14 years old. And the tragic thing about Eric is that he doesn't realise he's dead. And he's walking the castle looking for his parents who were tortured and killed here. And he said what Eric likes to do is he likes to let people know he's around by doing his party piece, by doing his trick. And back then, it's not, I was there last year and this is no longer the case, but in the doorway where Bob was stood, there wasn't a door. There was a big, thick, heavy curtain which ran from the top of the door to the floor. Really, really thick, like really heavy, like it took force to move it. You couldn't just push it to one side.
Yeah.
That's not there anymore. If you go today, there's a door. And he said what Eric likes to do is he makes the curtain move so people knows he's around. And no sooner had Bob spoke than the curtain started to move into the room where we were. But I don't mean it was just wafting in the breeze. I mean, it was almost as if you could see two hands on the other side of this curtain pushing it into the room where we were. You could see it rise, so it was no longer touching the floor.
Yeah.
And it was at a definite like angle with below where the hands would be falling like straight as if it was falling to the floor. And I could see behind the curtain and there was nobody there. And every single person in the castle was in the room. And it moved into the room and then it slowly went level again. And then it moved into the room again, stayed a second or two longer than it had the first time, and then it went level again. And then it just stopped. And we sat and looked at every single person all of us were looking at one another as if to say, did you just see that? It didn't do it again. And that rocked my belief system because the thing is, it's not like a ghost. I didn't see a ghost. I didn't hear a ghost. Bob told me what was going to happen and it happened. And I think about this all the time because, first of all, something moved that curtain and I've no idea what it was. And I've never heard of anybody else experiencing that. I was even thinking to myself, could Bob have like a button in his pocket and it's making the curtain move or something? But I've never heard of anybody else experiencing that. And I think the castle have got way too much to lose by doing something like that. Like they had our £60 each, whether something happened or not. They don't need to make those kind of things happen. And as I say, I've never heard of anybody else experiencing it. And the other thing is, I'd unfairly written Bob off as being a little bit wacky, like a little bit crazy.
Yep.
He told us what was going to happen, and then it happened. That rocked my belief system to its core, because I'm the kind of person, like, a lot of people think because I do a paranormal podcast, I'm, to quote Uncanny, team believer.
Yep.
Whereas I'm not. Somebody needs to show me something before I believe it.
Yep.
And Bob told all of us what was going to happen. Then it happened, which made me rethink everything that had happened across the rest of the night when he'd been with us. When he was saying, this person's here and that person's there, were we really not alone? The whole thing, like I didn't sleep properly for weeks, if not months after that, just trying to wrap my head around what happened. That was 20 years ago. I've done an awful lot of paranormal investigations since, and that's the most compelling thing I've ever experienced to this point. It was incredible. It was worth every penny I paid.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, I mean, the thing with Chillingham is, I think if you're wanting to go there ghost hunting, Rob, I think you've got to go there in the daytime to get your bearings. Because if you go at night, the one thing, I could have spent all day just wandering around reading stuff, reading the walls, reading the articles and everything, regardless of looking at all the collections and the different rooms and some of the incredible artifacts that they got and works of art and all. It's just chock full of all kinds of stuff. It's mad. reminded me of the inside of my head a bit, I think. There's just lots of things piled up in strange corners.
Humphrey Wakefield, who owns it,
Yes.
I think he's kind of used it as a storage unit. Some of the rooms are just full of his stuff. It's got no relation to the castle whatsoever. But there are a few rooms like that for sure.
Yeah. But when I was there and I was talking to him, what I found, very similar to the point you just made there, Rob, is I found the staff to be very matter-of-fact about things and not try and over-egg it or exaggerate or anything. Like the Blue Boy was the one that was front and centre for me, and obviously in the day you can go up and you can look in the room. They've got the room open, you can't go in, but you can look into it. And the staff were sort of saying, well, yeah, we don't really get that very often now. Nobody's really seen anything there. And they mentioned people just see sort of blinks of light, and that's mostly it. And I found the staff there very refreshing, because I've been to other famous places and they've just given you the whole nonsense stories, the kind of stories where someone was frightened to death by a ghost. Well, how do we know they were frightened to death by a ghost if there were nobody? Those kinds of stories, Rob, where you're like, what? If there's nobody there, how do we know how he died? What are you telling me here? It's bollocks. And so I found it really refreshing, but I can imagine it can be quite overawing. It can there's so much going on there from like I say, from the artifacts, from the rooms, from the setup, from some of the staircases are tiny and you're twisting and you're turning. You've got all kinds of different smells. Like you say, the torture room's full of horrendous exhibits and things. It's a lot to take in, even before you start to think about the paranormal and what could and couldn't be happening in there, Rob. To be honest, I think it would be a lot. It can overpower you, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think thinking about the last time I was there, something that I was thinking about quite a lot was the fact that there's an awful lot of talk in more recent years, especially about objects being haunted or having some kind of attachment. And if you think about the history of a lot of the stuff that's in there, who knows if there's anything connected to any of them, because a lot of that stuff, I don't even know where it's come from.
Yeah.
There's a room like along from the Great Hall, which has got a pram in with a horrible doll in,
yes,
and all sorts of other stuff lying around, and who knows where that came from in the first place. So I just think it's a really, really, really unusual, unique, scary, horrible place. I think it's one of those places where even watching like a video on YouTube or whatever doesn't necessarily do it justice. I think you've got to experience it, because you're right. Like, it's got its own smell. It has. It is somewhere that it'll always be very special to me, and it's a place that I think I'll always associate with my getting into proactively being involved in the paranormal.
Yeah, I mean, well, for me, it was just pushing all the right buttons, even wandering around the grounds and into that crazy forest that they've redone and everything. You can see what Sir Humphrey's done there over the years, because you see those articles and pictures of when they first bought the castle, and there's whole sections where the entire ceilings collapse and take the floors out. There's just basically the walls there, and you're like, well, hang on, I'm stood here.
Yeah, you had to take out like tons of pigeon poo. Tons of it, because it had been empty for, I think it was empty for about, I think it was abandoned in like the 20s, and they bought it in the 80s or something. I mean, those dates I'm just doing off the top of my head, but it was a long period of time where it was just empty and left.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, they just locked the doors and went. It was absolutely balmy, Rob. You think, hang on, are there more places like this dotted around the country that we're not aware of? You know, I'd like to stumble across, if nobody wants to buy it for £1, see what happens.
Yeah.
But it is. I recommend it highly. It's somewhere I always wanted to go, and it didn't disappoint. The only disappointment was I was only there for the day, so I have to go back.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah.
You will.
Yeah, gets under your skin. Do you have any other favourite locations that people might not be aware of? Because I would imagine, this is the strange thing, I think Chillingham is one of those places, Rob, that's more famous abroad than it is here for some reason. I'm not sure if it's one of those places that there are locations where something has been sort of packaged and presented to certain things, like Lep Castle in Ireland is the most haunted castle in Ireland, and yet most Irish people was, no, it's nowhere near. But it's one of those that's very well known in America. And I think Chillingham is the same, because when, these days you mention Chillingham, people go, and yet 20 years ago, Chillingham was one of those places that people would always say, oh, it's on my haunted bucket list. And that conversation doesn't seem to be there anymore. And yet me and you both really loved the place.
I do. I mean, in terms of, is there anywhere else? Chillingham's the one. Like, I think I've been thinking this year about where I want to investigate for like a Halloween Patreon episode. And I did want to try and get back into Chillingham, but it's just not going to happen. So some of my other favourite places, I guess, are the Castle Keep in Newcastle, which I think is horrendous. Like, it's criminally overlooked, even by the people of Newcastle. I think a lot of people just don't know it's there because it's not in the town centre. It's right at the bottom end of Newcastle, and a lot of people, again, who live in Newcastle don't even know that's why it's called Newcastle, because before that castle was there, Newcastle was called Monkchester, and then a new castle popped up, and people are like, "Oh, let's go and live next to the new castle," and that's where Newcastle came from. I love York. I haven't been for a few years now, but I do love York, and there's a couple of places in York that I think are wonderful spots. There's a place where I did I did a book about York where me and the three guys who comprise my team did a ghost hunt at a place that was called Haunted for a while. It's number 35 Stonegate, and for a long time it was open as a kind of just like a haunted building. It was open where you could go in and get a self-led tour around this haunted place, and they had webcams all over the inside, and if you walked past, you could watch the webcams online or in the window. It's a shop now. Sadly, it's an Oliver Bonus clothes shop. But I did a ghost hunt there in 2010, 2011, which was incredible. It was an unbelievable night. But sadly, that's kind of off the table now. Dunstanburgh Castle in Northumberland isn't a place that people could go and do a ghost hunt because it's English Heritage, National Trust, one of the two. I think it's English Heritage. Yeah. And they wouldn't allow such a thing. But that's a place that I love visiting. And if you go along during the day and you get the day right, you can be the only person in there or one of few people in there. Yeah. That's a very special spot. But there's loads of them. The most recent ghost hunt I did was at Lumley Castle Hotel in County Durham. Yeah. It's a 4-star hotel, and it's situated inside of Lumley Castle, which still is an incredibly historic location, which has got one of the most famous ghost stories in the Northeast. The story of, I'm having a complete mental block. The story, Lily of Lumley. Yeah. It's been a long day. Lily of Lumley, who was supposedly killed by some monks and thrown down a well, and her body is said to come out of the well every night and walk through Lumley Castle. And I did a ghost hunt there in January of this year, and I've been working through the audio, and there's going to be a 2-part Patreon episode across April and May, and that was one hell of a night. That was an incredible night. It was really good. There's loads of places. Like, I could spend all night listing them. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Dunstanburgh is somewhere else I'm aware of as well. Like I say, because this is the thing about it. Like, if you drop on the right day up there, it's amazing how beautiful it is, and yet how desolate it can seem. Rob, it's remarkable sometimes, and it's one of the jewels in the UK's crown, that coastal area. And sometimes you think it's only us Northerners that know about it. You know what I mean? Sometimes you mention Whitley Bay to people, and it's like it's in Australia. They've never heard of it.
I was in Whitley Bay at the weekend for fishing trips. I'm only like 15, 20 minutes away from it. I am really fortunate where I live. Like, Northumberland's just up the road. I've got Tynemouth and Whitley Bay nearby. Yeah. Both of which have got incredibly haunted places too, like Tynemouth Priory. Yeah. 10 minutes away from where I live has got a brilliant story about a Viking and stuff. So yeah, there's loads of them. So many. Like, the thing is, when I started doing a podcast, I thought, will I ever run out of places to cover? Never. No. No, there's just so many of them, and I mean, I'm not exclusively like I don't exclusively cover places in the UK, but I probably could and never run out of places to talk about. We've got loads, got loads.
It is. Every county has dozens of locations. Even I would imagine Rutland, which is the smallest county, Rob. I would imagine they've got plenty there. You know, it's not just. I'm setting themselves a challenge here. How haunted is how haunted is Rutland? But I would imagine it's the same because any part of the UK you mention, every place has got the big story, and then there's dozens and dozens of little ones that come underneath it. You've just got to scratch the surface and they all appear.
Well, there's loads of weird stuff. I mean, Northumberland's got its own cryptid. Supposedly, the Beast of Bowlam Lake.
Yes.
Which was a big thing in the press in 2002. A big, hairy, Bigfoot type monster wandering around a woods that surrounds a 25-acre lake in Northumberland. There's just weird stuff all over the UK.
I remember. I'm trying to think where we stayed a couple of years ago up that neck of the woods. Not almost almost on the border of County Durham. It's where they filmed Heartbeat.
Oh, Gothland.
That's it. Thank you.
I'm ashamed to know that, but yes, Gothland is where they filmed Heartbeat.
Yes, well, they're very proud of it because everything they sell is about Heartbeat.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
But it's very nice and it's a really good location and it's in beautiful top end of the North Yorkshire Moors, so it's fabulous. They've got stories of black shucks that run about round there, which I had never heard of, and I love my black dog stories. I did not know that there was one in Gothland at all until I got there. And there was a little pamphlet in the souvenir shop up there next to the Heartbeat fridge magnets and all that, going on about the black dog of Gothland. I thought, whoa, how cool.
All sorts of stuff all over the UK. I mean, even like, I was just thinking there, like in Northumberland, we've got Flodden Field, which people would just drive past and just think it's a field with a weird cross in the middle of it for some reason. Site of the bloodiest battle to ever take place on English soil, and the site of the battle where the last British monarch was killed in battle in 1513. Somewhere between 12 and 14,000 people killed there in the period of just 2 hours.
Yeah.
Got places all over the UK. Spoiled.
Yeah. We're very good at battlefields here.
Yeah, we've got plenty of them. Sadly, for those people who died, though.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, it's not just fighting with the Scots and the Welsh. We've had Civil War. We've had War of the Roses. We've had all kinds of clashes over the years. You've got invasions from the Normans and the Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons. So, yeah, there's not much of this country that hasn't seen a battle or two over the years, Rob.
No. Like Holy Island in Northumberland, I think it was 793.
Yeah.
Vikings just turned up and started killing everybody. Yeah.
Barmy. Who was it? I was watching something the other day and somebody found some kind of really expensive fossil on Lindisfarne. And I didn't even know it was prone for that. And they just stumbled across some like massive ammonite just on the beach. They just sort of tripped up and saw this fossil and went, what? And I was like, what? I didn't even know that was going on, because that's an amazing place, like you say, because I got there as well. I mean, the whole place of Holy Island is one of those locations that it is just atmospheric purely because it's a tidal island and you can only get on and get off at certain times of the day. And if you don't, well, hard lines, you've got to stay overnight. That's it. But even through its religious draw for people, because when I went there, it was actually Easter, so people were doing the walk across the tidal path, carrying the cross, bringing it towards there. There's a castle as well, which I didn't even know till I got there.
Yeah.
But it's also because it's obviously, but it's also a fishing community, and so you've got some of these incredibly beautiful gravestones where it's wonderful poems about people who've been lost at sea and such ornately carved headstones for people. And you see that dotted around most fishing communities those days have sadly gone for a lot of them, though, Rob. But they're just steeped in those kinds of legend and lore. And even if you talk about the people who were born with a call over their heads and how they were always fortunate, and the myths and legends about people selling them, because obviously the myth goes that if you're born with the call over your head, you can never drown. And so fishermen valued these as their most prized assets, because if you got one of them on board, you weren't going to sink.
Yeah. Strange old world. Lindisfarne, or Holy Island as it's known, incredibly popular location. The thing is, I think as well, anybody who's fortunate enough to stumble across a fossil, because you're not like metal detect there or anything like that. So
No.
I didn't realise that. But I do adore that place. I think it's really, really popular. I mean, it's been really popular with visitors for a long time, but in more recent years, it's really popular because Vera,
Yeah.
the crime drama on the telly, that she lived on Holy Island, and one of the 28 Years Later movies
Yes.
was filmed there, the first one of the new lot that's come out.
Certainly was. Absolutely. Ironically, it's also a magnet for celebrities. There's a lot of films get done there as well. There's a lot of filming goes on there because when my partner lived there, she met Dan Aykroyd, who'd come in for his dinner.
Oh, I hope he was nice.
She said he was very pleasant. He just wanted lots of honey.
That's good.
Yes. So I can confirm that Dan Aykroyd is a nice guy. We're all right.
That's good. Ghostbuster. That's good. That's good. I'd be sad if he wasn't.
No, exactly. Well, Rob, it's been a pleasure to finally speak to you, my friend. Where can everybody find your books, follow your brilliant work, listen to your excellent podcast, and keep up to date with all things going on in the world of Rob Kirkup?
The easiest place is probably to go to the website, how-haunted.com, and there's links there to all of my books on Amazon, and there's detail there about the podcast. There's a link to me merch store, and maybe check us out on social media. So I don't do Facebook, but I do Twitter, or X as we call it these days, Blue Sky, and Instagram. And on all of them, if you were to search for How Haunted Pod, you will find me. And whenever something new is released, you'll be able to see what's going on. And if anybody wants to listen to the podcast, just search How Haunted. Anywhere, literally anywhere you can get podcasts. You can even say to your smart speaker, I've got to be careful what I say in case mine starts beeping, but you can even say like play How Haunted and it'll play the most recent episode. And the episodes are quite like if anybody wants to check out the podcast, the standard episodes are me on my own looking at a place. Like the episodes are generally a minimum of 30 minutes long, and it's just me on my own, but I go deep and very deep into the history of places and then look at the ghost stories. And sometimes like a listener might have sent in their story, or I might get a guest on or poltergeist, as I prefer to call them, because I love a pun. I sometimes record episodes on location where I go to the place I'm talking about, like Flodden Field I mentioned before. I went and did an episode where I walked around Flodden Field while I was talking about it. At Christmas time, I do a 2-part listener ghost stories special, and in October, the scariest month of the year, I do a themed month. The podcast's fortnightly, every other Friday, but in October it goes weekly, and all the episodes are extra long. And like 2024, I did Vampire Month. Mm-hmm. Talked about Vikings a moment ago. And in 2025, I did Monster Month. So that was all about cryptids. And I don't know I think I do know what this year is going to be, but I'm not going to say yet in case I change my mind. My Patreon episodes are probably the most popular. They end up on the standard feed like a year later, but the Patreon's only £3, and every month I put out a ghost hunt episode, and they're always like a couple of hours long or longer. And I go off and do a ghost hunt somewhere with my small team, and I tell the listener everything that happens. I talk about the history of the place, I talk about the ghost stories of the place, and I put in the audio from the night so people can hear what happened as it happened, almost like they're part of the team. They're an awful lot of work to put together, but people seem to, like, I get a lot of people getting in touch saying they're their favourite episodes, so I figure it's worth the time commitment. And there's loads of episodes out already. There's like over 130 standard episodes already out. So there's a massive back catalogue for anybody who fancies giving How Haunted a listen. When I started doing it, I honestly didn't expect anybody to listen, if truth be told. I started it on a bit of a whim.
Yeah.
But I've recently bypassed 1 million downloads, and I never expected to get to 100, let alone 1 million. So it's I mean, you'll know as well as me, it takes up so much time, but it's a real labour of love. And I think if I ever reach the point where I don't enjoy doing it, that'll be the day to hang up the microphone and headphones. But I put my heart and soul into it. So if anybody does give it a listen, I truly hope you enjoy it.
I recommend it highly. It's a great show. Don't be so hard on yourself. And I went through all that. Yeah. Will anybody listen? How many episodes does the average podcast last? What do I need to watch out for? And you just basically learn on the job and get where you are. And here I am.
Yeah.
Hitting almost 400 episodes, 7 years in, Rob. So if it still makes you excited and you get the opportunity to speak to people like yourself, my friend, then that's why I enjoy doing it, and people enjoy us having a chat. So why not? All power to us.
Yeah. Exactly. 100%.
Well, listen, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully you'll come back and we can talk about some other wonderful, weird locations and hauntings over the years, my friend. And I wish you the very best. And I'll put links for everything in the show notes so people can track you down. And thanks for your time. It's been lovely, Rob.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you very much.